Welcome to Friday. If you can see past everybody in the crew here, you see up on this board, I started writing on this board. It was, Tunisia was 131, January 31st. I said Tunisia has a good possibility of being the Archduke Ferdinand moment, the moment that set the world on fire. When it happened back in World War I, nobody knew that was going to be the straw. But it was, and it just started to burn all across the world, and eventually we were in World War I. On January 31st, I said that, and I said that radicals, Islamists, communists, and socialists are all working together against Israel, capitalism, and working together to overturn stability. The world said that I was a madman for saying it. Anybody here remember what all the people say? Everybody said that was crazy. Then it all started to happen. When Egypt fell, I said, part two, protests will become contagious and they will spread. And first they will spread, sweep the Middle East, and then destabilize Europe and then the rest of the world. Those things are all verifiable. They're happening now. How does anyone know that these things can happen? Because you take people at their word, especially people who say they want to kill you. You take them at their word. And if you just listen to the radicals and the Islamists and the communists and the socialists, they will tell you what they plan on doing, but everybody puts their head in the sand. I will tell you now something that I think everybody is going to call me crazy for. Well, let me take a poll here. How many people in this audience think that it is crazy to think that Israel is now being set up as the fall guy, and a lot by our own country and our own countrymen? Anybody agree with that? Agree with it? Look at that. That's amazing. Israel is our ally, one of our greatest allies. And everybody, at least in this audience, thinks we're setting her up. This has been weighing on my heart an awful lot because, well, for two reasons. One, I'm a Christian. And I believe in the story of the Israelite from the beginning. And I know you stand against the Israelites, we are all going to pay for it. Take all the Bible stuff out of it, and let's just look at it with common sense. If Israel is destroyed, does it make the world a safer place or a more dangerous place? Dangerous. Much more dangerous. If Israel is destroyed, do you think they stop and say, I'm good, got our fill, Europe, you're good, Europe falls. After Europe falls, America falls. It may even be Israel, America. I have been looking for the voice of the person that will take a stand for Israel in governments. I can't find them. And I have decided that if no one will stand in a leadership role, then it is time for the American people to take their rightful place as the leaders and stand for Israel. No one is standing. And if we don't stand, God will not judge us kindly. I've been reading an awful lot of history over the last few years. And I have found a guy that I didn't know anything about a year ago, named Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I don't want to live the life of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and I don't think anybody here does. But we better, or others will live the lives of those who went to concentration camps. Dietrich Bonhoeffer is a guy who stood up before anybody else would and said, stop, don't you see what we're doing? And the churches in Germany, they would sing louder as the trains of Jews would go by. The churches would sing louder so they couldn't hear the cries of the Jews. We have to take a stand now before it becomes more difficult. So, the point of tonight's show is I I would like to encourage you in America to take a stand and know what you really believe. But I guess we should start at the beginning. First, so many Americans don't even know the history of Israel. And boy, you can't really, kind of a long history. Kind of hard to do in like 2.5 minutes, but that's why we did it in a short cartoon form. Here it is.
And now, the history of the Middle East in a couple of minutes. Chapter 1.
Around the turn of the century, the Jews decided, we need a homeland. What I'm looking for is a nice MLT, mutton, lettuce, and tomato sandwich, and maybe, I don't know, a homeland.
So they all start an ingathering.
The Zionists are coming to reclaim the homeland.
Palestinians, who aren't really called Palestinians, they're Syrians. They're kind of wandering around, tending their flocks, walking around basically in the desert. Find themselves with a bunch of Jews there in the desert with them.
Would you like a nice MLT?
Meanwhile, back in Britain, they're starting to ask themselves,
Queenie, baby, what do we do? All these Jews are here. They're going to be starting picking fights now with the Arabs, and the Arabs aren't going to like it.
I don't know. Can't we just split the land?
Arabs don't like the idea.
Wait a minute. Who are all these people coming and trying to take all of our land? We're the Jews. And let me tell you something. You know what this place really needs? Is a nice Jewish deli. Want some lox?
Now comes the UN. The United Nations decides, you know what? They're going to split it all up. We're going to give half of it to, quote-unquote, Palestine, which is actually Syria, and the other part to the new Jewish homeland. That way, everybody's happy.
Right.
On May 14, 1948, the Zionists declare their own state, along with the United Nations. The next day, the Palestinians, aided by the armies of Jordan, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, and, whoa, Iraq, gotta love them, launched a war to prevent Jewish independence and to secure control of all of the land. Unfortunately, in that war, the Zionists not only managed to hold all the areas assigned to them by the United Nations, but seize part of the land designated for the Palestinian state as well.
In other words, they kicked ass.
Here's the thing everybody always leaves out of the history books. The other areas designated for the Palestinians by the United Nations were taken, not by the Israelis, but by Jordan and Egypt. Jordan annexed the West Bank, while Egypt said, hey, Gaza's district, you're out. But don't worry. In the next episode, we're going to find out that neither Arab state allowed the Palestinians to form their own independent government in either of these areas. Those wacky Arabs.
This has been the history of the Middle East in a couple of minutes on the Glenn Beck program.
Okay, so it's a little sloppy, but you pretty much get the idea. We want to talk about this. We have several guests with us. Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, he is the Executive Vice President of the New York Board of Rabbis. John Hagee, he is the Senior Pastor at Cornerstone Church in San Antonio, Texas, and founder of Christians United for Israel. And joining from Washington is Ambassador Dory Gold, President of the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs and former Israeli ambassador to the UN. He just testified before a House committee about Israel's security needs. Ambassador, let me start with you. This audience, I don't think there was one person that was in dissent. This audience believes Israel is being set up by the United States, our own government. How is this looking to you, sir?
Well, right now we are facing a problem that looks like a setup, but it comes really from Europe at this point. The British, the Germans, and the French want a body called the Quartet, a multilateral body that's supposed to meet in mid-April, to issue a statement that would tear away from Israel the territorial buffers that have protected it for over 40 years in the West Bank. I'm speaking specifically about the Jordan Valley, which has been the front line of Israel's defense since that time. They want us to go back to the pre-1967 lines, what are called the 49 Armistice lines. And if that happens, Israel cannot be defended.
So you have Egypt coming out and saying that if you defend yourself, if you respond, you've already had an unbelievable tragedy. The Fogel family was killed by radical Islamists. Then also we had the biggest terror strike from Gaza, more rockets launched than any other time in the last couple of years. On the weekend, we went into Libya. Nobody seemed to cover that. And then there was another one. The terror strike. Israel is going to have to respond at some point. But Egypt is now saying that they will declare war on you if you respond.
Well, unfortunately, what is happening, and you were one of the first people to point this out, is that we're seeing a spread of these revolts across the Arab world. They're initially being perceived in the West as being Twitter and Facebook revolts. But notice the days in which the revolts get bad. They're Fridays, when the mosques are filled. And on those Fridays, it's the Muslim Brotherhood, which is engineering a major takeover in the Middle East. Egypt is one case. The Muslim Brotherhood was barely noticeable in Egypt when Mubarak was thrown out of power. Today, they're the major force behind change in Egypt, and they are the force that is insisting that a future Egyptian government cancel the peace treaty with Israel.
Rabbi, there was a major piece for the UN that came out and said Israel is an oppressor. It is engaging in, I believe the words genocide were in this report. And it was a major stone that people used to stand on against Israel. The writer of that report has just reversed himself. What is the significance of that?
Glenn, I just want to say that when you bring in Hamas as your expert witness, and you depend on them to give you the testimony, the truthful testimony, how shocking is it that at some point you're going to be embarrassed? And now you have this judge, and he happens to be Jewish, which makes it even more painful for us, is saying that had he known then what he knows now, he would not have written such a report. The problem is, and you see this all the time, when someone is charged with a crime, the reversal will appear,
doesn't matter.
right? Doesn't matter. You've already tainted the character. But the reversal is on a much later page. I looked at some of the front pages of papers. I didn't see the Goldstone 2 receiving as much attention as Goldstone 1.
Of course not.
So Israel has already paid a price in terms of credibility again.
Ambassador, you want to chime in on this?
Yeah, I mean, Justice Goldstone came up with what I would call a blood libel against the state of Israel. He charged that the Israeli army back in 2008, 2009 intentionally killed Palestinian civilians. That is complete falsehood. Anybody who's familiar with what happened in Operation Cast Lead, the Gaza war, knows that the Israeli army provided warnings that were unprecedented to the Palestinian population. They provided leaflets, like many armies. But our intelligence services also called people's homes and said, if you have weaponry in your home, you better leave, because in about 10 minutes, our Air Force is going to destroy that home. It is a military target. Do you know of an army that takes Arabic-speaking intelligence officers and has them call the target to tell the civilians to leave?
No.
That's a country that wants to kill civilians intentionally. It was a complete lie. It was made up. And I'm glad that Justice Goldstone finally stood up and said the report he issued is untrue.